Winner of season 20 of The Worst Cooks in America murdered her 3-year-old foster child. On January 14th, 2021, Ariel Robinson, who was a former winner of The Worst Cooks in America, beat her 3-year-old foster child to death because she didn't eat her pancakes fast enough. According to Ariel's husband Jerry, he said on the morning of this day he was in the yard and he heard Ariel spanking Victoria. And if that was the case, couldn't he have intervened and stopped it? When he came inside, he said that he tried to revive Victoria by giving her Tylenol and a bath in Epsom salt, but at that point she was already in cardiac arrest and she died at the hospital. Ariel and Jerry had 2 children of their own, and they adopted Victoria and her 2 other biological brothers. Ariel originally stated that Victoria's older brother had anger issues and he was the one who beat her, and then she changed her story during the trial and said that it was actually her husband Jerry. Victoria's biological family pointed out that Ariel's Instagram photos indicated signs of abuse towards Victoria. Ariel was sentenced to life in prison and Jerry pled guilty to aiding and abetting homicide by child abuse and faces 10 to 20 years in prison.
It is worse than a murderous, laughing grandmother. I don't know about you guys, but that shit comes right out of my nightmares. This is the story of serial killer Nanny Doss, aka the Giggling Granny. And viewer discretion advised, we're going to be going over some gory and somewhat triggering topics today. Our story begins in 1905 in Blue Mountain, Alabama, where Nanny and her 4 siblings were forced to work on their parents' farm instead of going to school. Surprisingly, this wasn't the thing that caused Nanny's sociopathic behavior. It was the head injury that she suffered while riding a train at the age of 6. As some of you may not know, head injuries like this from a developmental age can cause sociopathic and antisocial tendencies. And of course, as the story normally goes, her father was completely and wholly abusive towards her, so she found her escape disassociating into what her life could be, with the idyllic and perfect marriage. She often read the Lonely Hearts column and a lot of romance novels. And then at the age of 16, Nanny Doss got married to a man that she only knew for 4 months. Typical? His name was Charlie Braggs, and they had 4 children together from the years of 1921 to 1927. However, they lived with Braggs's mother, who was completely abusive in very, very similar ways to Nanny's dad. And let me tell you, that did not bode well for Nanny Doss. So here we can ask ourselves, was it Nanny's father, was it the head injury, or was it Braggs's mother that sent her back to her past that made her really start killing people? The same year that Nanny and Charlie's marriage started to fall apart, 2 children died under mysterious circumstances. One minute they were completely and perfectly fine and of great health, and the next they were dead. That's suspicious. Things just kept cycling after this. Just a year after her divorce, she married Frank Harrelson, who she met on the Lonely Hearts column. They would send each other romantic letters, if you catch my drift. And during this time, he was an alcoholic and he was very abusive. Again, repeating that abuse pattern from her father. Does not go well. But you'd be surprised to hear that that marriage lasted all of 16 years. That's a long time. Before the marriage ended in 1945, Nanny actually killed her newborn granddaughter by using a hairpin to stab her through the head into the brain. This just keeps getting worse and worse. Part 2 up right away. Ugh. Nanny Doss crawled right out of my freaking nightmares. I'm not even gonna try to lie to you guys about that. I'm terrified of this woman. So this is part 2, and of course, trigger warning again, things are going to be gory and disturbing, so if you don't like that sort of thing, turn this video off. So we had just finished talking about how Nanny murdered her newborn granddaughter just days after the baby's birth by stabbing her in the head to the brain with a hairpin. But is it possible that it gets worse? Because it gets so much worse. While in her care, her 2-year-old grandson, Robert, died of asphyxiation. Wow, I butchered that word. Oh my god. I'm pretty sure that depicted above is one of her kids. And just look how this woman is looking at Nanny. She's looking at her with complete and utter disdain and mistrust. I just find this picture so telling and interesting. Nanny's husband, Frank Harrelson, was next on the list. She murdered him by mixing a secret ingredient into his moonshine, and he died a week later. Next up on the list was Arlie Lanning, who responded to an ad that Nanny put in the Lonely Hearts column. She poisoned his food while playing, the "I'm such a great wife, I love you so much" role, and he died shortly after. But still, this entire time, Nanny was completely obsessed with finding her perfect love, or her true love, soulmate, whatever you want to call it. Her next victim was Richard Morton. Although he was cheating on her profusely, she didn't notice because before she killed him, she killed her mother, who needed taking care of after suffering a broken hip. Shortly after she killed her mother, she killed one of her sisters. We're just going to take subtlety and just throw it out the window at this point, right, Nanny? After these two murders, she turned back around and said, "Hey, cheating husband, I'm going to kill you now." And he died under mysterious circumstances. Samuel was her last and final victim, and he was probably the best man that she had been with. He didn't abuse her, he didn't drink, he didn't cheat. He simply told her that she couldn't do something that she wanted to do. So her first response was to murder him. And finally, Nanny made a mistake. After this spree of killing, the doctor suspected something weird, so he tricked Nanny and said, "Oh, you can receive this life insurance policy, just let us perform an autopsy." And she did, and they found poison. They found poison, is that what you would technically say? You guys know what I mean. Part 3 up right away, buckle in, this is gonna get pretty interesting. Nanny Doss hadn't let the suspicious doctor perform an autopsy on her last husband, she never would have been caught. So thank God for that little sneaky snake of a doctor. After exhuming her other husbands and testing their bodies, performing autopsies, whatever it might be, they arrested Nanny. And the reason she is called the Giggling Granny is because every single time she talked about a murder that she committed, she would laugh and she would have just a joyous time recounting these stories. Not only that, but she attributed her murder spree to her head injury. She also told police that her motive was never money for killing these men, as we could have guessed from earlier on in the story. She told them that she killed them because she was looking for her real-life romance or the perfect mate. Nanny Doss died in prison in 1964, and that's really the story. So I wanted to ask you guys, do you think that this head injury caused her to become a murderer, or do you think it was a combination of things like her dad, her head injury, the lack of education growing up, and then whenever she married her first husband, his abusive mother? Or were those all just excuses? Because we see a lot of times that these serial killers will say, "Oh, I committed a murder because A, B, and C," when really it was none of the above. So I'm curious what you guys think about her past and her psychology. And yeah, let's discuss it. Comment section now. Let's go. She disappeared without a trace, and the only clue left behind was a mysterious note in her bedroom. This is the disappearance of Tabitha Tudor. Tabitha was anything but a problematic child. She had good grades, she had a good relationship with her parents, and 2 adult siblings that didn't live with her. When she was 13 years old, she disappeared without a trace. It was April 29th, 2003, and her mother Deborah and dad Bo had left for work already. And at some point after 7:30 a.m. on her 10-minute walk to school, Tabitha vanished. She was last seen getting into an unknown red car with an unknown male driver wearing a baseball cap. Although her parents say that that's impossible, Tabitha never would have gotten into a car with a stranger, which kind of makes you wonder. The only suspicious thing that police found that was out of character or out of place was this note in Tabitha's bedroom. TDT NMTH. TDT is Tabitha's initials, so who is MTH? Typically, a girl this age would write her initials on a piece of paper with another person's initials if she had a crush on them or was fantasizing in some sort of way, or if she was leaving behind a hint of someone that might have been stalking her. You never know, but it does seem pretty suspicious considering her parents say that she would never get into the car with someone she didn't know. Was this someone that she was crushing on and possibly was grooming her in some sort of disturbing way? These are all just questions I'm asking myself as I'm researching this case, and I figured I'd let you guys know what's going on inside my head as I'm reading up on this. People actually believe that Tabitha is still alive, and is because on October 30th, 2003, a truck driver and a hotel front desk concierge both saw a man with two girls, teenage girls, that looked very, very scared with him. And both people said that one of the teenage girls looked a lot like Tabitha. So FBI and other missing persons resources have come up with this photo of what Tabitha might look like as an adult at 32 years old today. Her parents actually fully believe that she's still alive and that she was sold into a sex trade. What do you guys think? Do you think that Tabitha could possibly still be alive?